are in the world. My name is Salailo Makwidir, and you are tuned in to Salam Media today. And this afternoon, well, if you are in South Africa, it's afternoon already. We're about 7 minutes past 4. Today, we're gonna be touching on a story that highlights the importance of free speech and the courage it takes for one to speak out against injustice. Recently, a Canadian-Palestinian journalist, Zahraa Al-Akhrass, found herself at the center of a controversy when she was let go from Global News, a news and current affairs division of the Canadian Global Television Network, for essentially raising a voice about the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza and the genocide that is currently being perpetrated against the people of Palestine by the Israeli government, something that we should say unequivocally because it's what's been happening and it's what's been proven beyond reasonable doubt for, you know, all the amount of years that it has been happening in that part of the world. So this is something that's very close to us here at Salam Media because we've also experienced shadow banning and all kinds of threats and all kinds of blockages coming from social media. And we just wanted to highlight this story for from Zahra. She's joining us right now live from Southern Ontario in Canada. Zahra, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much for having me, Lila. Nice to be with you.
Thank you, thank you. I think maybe we can start by you sharing your perspective on the situation in Gaza right now, that led you to ultimately speak out, and quote unquote got you into trouble with your employers.
Look, I must say the situation in Gaza and in occupied Palestine has been going on for decades. The thing that happens is that media usually treats Palestine as a trend. When there is so called an armed conflict, when there is tensions, when there is violence, quote unquote, as you say, the media picks up the story and starts talking about it. So usually the audience has no clear understanding, has no deep understanding of the situation in Palestine. What's been happening in Palestine for decades already is an apartheid system. I'm sure you're aware of that.
Mm,
Is attempts to ethnic cleansing the Palestinians, to seize the land of the Palestinians. This is an occupation, basically, human rights violations of all sorts. Israel is committing against the Palestinians with complete international impunity, with no consequences whatsoever. And it just happens that people around the world forget about it and just get on with their lives. And I'd say once every couple of years, the news come up on the stage again, and it becomes a trend to talk about Palestine. But the reality is, what's been happening in Palestine, what we see right now on TV, is not something new. Is not something that just started a month ago. It's been going on already for decades.
mm, mm. That's so true, and you're so correct that the media, specifically social media and mainstream media, treats it like a trend, where something happens, an attack, and then or maybe a mosque is being bombed. That's when you'll see Palestine trending, while those people have been living under an open air prison essentially for 8 years. But I want us to touch on what specific incidents that compelled you to address this issue on a public platform. Your former employers. What was it? A tweet? Was it something you said or on a live broadcast? And how did they call you? Just give a recollection for us and how you were ultimately sacked.
So, to be clear, my former employer have not informed me of the specific posts or social media comments that have caused my termination of employment. Until today, I don't even know. They just told me I'm being unbalanced, and my criticism for Israel is given a perception of bias according to their standards. And despite my repeated asks for a discussion, for a clear understanding of their accusation against me, I wasn't provided with one. So honestly, I don't know. But from my perspective, what has happened is that I found myself, firstly, as a Palestinian, and obviously as a human being, in front of a humanitarian crisis. We're watching Palestinians being killed on live TV. Already more than 10,000 of them have been killed. And people find themselves in such situation, they must speak up. It's their obligation, first of all, as a human being and as a Palestinian, to speak up for my people. And as a journalist, this is exactly my job. This should be my job description, to speak truth to power, to call out injustice, to call out occupation. I can't simply just sit back and say I'm not involved and say this is a complicated issue. This is not complicated. There are human rights violations taking place right now, and this should be called out. This is exactly what I did. I found this to be my ethical responsibility. It touches on my integrity as a journalist, and unfortunately, the consequences were to lose my job.
Mm, mm. And what has been the last communication you've heard with Global News? Was it a formal meeting, a sit down, or it was just an email to tell you you should not come back to work the next day?
I demanded to have a meeting with whoever is responsible of firing me because I needed answers. No one was providing me with answers. So in the end, on October 17, on the same day of the Baptist Hospital massacre, I was on a phone call with a senior leader at Global News who ultimately fired me and informed me of the decision of the company. During that phone call, I repeatedly asked which posts exactly are the problem, why are they the problem, and so on. I was told that all over everything I have been posting gave the perception of bias, that I, as a journalist, am not able to communicate in a balanced way about the situation according to their standards. However, I argue that these standards are complicit and are unethical when it comes to what's been happening in Palestine, to treat the situation as if you are able to afford to stay silent, or as if a journalist should be ethically able to shut up and say nothing and just let these atrocities go by unchallenged. These very policies that the company is accusing me of violating are unethical, and these policies are biased in their nature.
Mm. Knowing Canada and knowing their politics, I'm pretty sure when the war in Russia and Ukraine was happening, there were people that had a strong stance that were your colleagues about probably being pro-Ukraine in the war. And how was it treated? Because we live in an age of social media where conflicts around the world are no longer read in just newspapers. It's all over social media. Journalists are also now, people start seeing that just have an opinion also. You can, report on the facts, but at the end of the day, you're also a human being. You also have a right, to freedom of speech on a personal level and not just as a journalist. So how was the Ukraine-Russia war treated? Were your colleagues treated the same way, which I'm pretty certain they also held a strong stance on the situation there?
Look, I call this conditional freedom of speech, conditional or one-sided democracy. And that is, you're free to speak up your opinion as long as it fits the narrative. Uh, that doesn't include criticizing Israel or calling out its human rights violations and crimes in Palestine. When Putin invaded Ukraine, the government of Canada, and thus the mainstream media in Canada, held a strong position opposing the invasion of Ukraine. Journalists were not asked to stay balanced and to not state their opinions when it comes to Ukraine. In fact, I have a few colleagues who, at least I remember one of them right now, they have the flag of Ukraine pinned on their Twitter account. That's the
Mhm.
official Twitter account that mentions their journalists of Global News, and they absolutely face no consequences. If I were to post a Palestinian flag on my account, I would be called out as unbalanced and lose my job. So this is conditional and it's one-sided freedom of speech. Media companies usually issue social media policies that
Mhm.
try to limit what journalists say and share on social media in a way that the company believes it impacts the business of the company. Obviously, they have issued such policy when it came to Palestine and told journalists that despite your personal opinions, you're not allowed to say anything that could look unbalanced. And this is exactly what they have told me. However, when Putin invaded Ukraine, no such policy was shared. When I challenged the senior leader who I was on the phone call with about this, he actually told me that he is not even aware of my posts online
Mm.
about Ukraine, which exactly proves my point. There is no supervision when it comes to other topics rather than Israel. Supervision and controlling of freedom of speech only comes up when you're criticizing Israel. If you're criticizing Putin, you're free to do so. You even might be applauded for that in the newsroom. You might even get a promotion. I don't know. But when it comes to Israel, you face such consequences, unfair consequences, of course, to lose your job and to be silenced, and then to actually be offered money to stay shut even after your termination.
Hmm. You know, I wanted to maybe elaborate a bit on the broader implications of your dismissal for freedom of speech and journalism in Canada. Um, does it, finally put, to light that, the Canadian media scene or media industry, if they don't agree with you or don't agree with your politics as a journalist, you'll be silenced, you'll be taken to the big benches, and your voice will be, suppressed, which is obviously what's happening to you right now.
Look, I only hope that by speaking up, I have shed a light on what journalists of minorities face in legacy newsrooms in Canada and generally in the West. Since I have spoken up about what happened to me, lots of journalists, huge names all over the world, people you would know, your audience would know. I just don't want to mention names right now, but they have reached out and they expressed solidarity. And they basically said, you have said what we have been going through for years. The problem is, in the newsrooms, journalists of minorities are supposed to be hired to inform the reporting, right? To help balance the reporting of this organization. However, they must abide by policies and standards that are put by decision makers who are mostly not from minority groups, who don't relate to the issues minority groups face. And so, whenever we speak up about Palestine, about other issues, we're always told that we're being unbalanced and we're asked to shut up and to stay quiet and so on. We are being judged by rules that don't relate to us and don't speak to our lived experiences. And that has a term actually. This is called institutional bias, or other people call it institutional racism. And that is the policies and the institutions themselves are not designed to give justice to people of minority groups. This has been going on in Western newsrooms for decades already. This is something I would say almost all journalists of minority groups are suffering from. We feel like we're literally banging our head against the wall, trying to get decision makers to understand us, to actually consider us experts on these topics that we relate to, that we come from. But unfortunately, for one reason or another, they seem to believe that they know better and believe that we still must abide by those rules that are not designed to give justice to our causes.
Mm. I think as a journalist, as someone who's in the media space, I can tell you for free, if you come into the space, you're doing it for the pure passion and love for it, and it's definitely not about the money. If you want the money, you should probably go do something else. But it's just something that is so personal, it draws you in. How did your dismissal affect you? You probably had some projects going on as a journalist, some articles or stories you're working on, and just like that, everything just cut, and you can't do what you love, and you can't wake up every morning and do what you love and what you devoted your whole life to. How did it affect you on a personal level, and your mental health also?
Look, to be quite honest with you, when I first got the first communication from my direct manager reminding me that they have received a complaint regarding my social media posts about Palestine, uh, deep down, I knew this is probably the end with this organization. I have decided that I want to keep on my advocacy, and I hope my employer would understand that. I was hoping to have a discussion with them to be able, just like you said, to be able to keep telling the stories. This is exactly the reason why I became a journalist, and this is what I want to do. But it came down to a moment of it was a pivotal moment, as they say. Um, it's either you choose to stay silent and keep your job and work on other stories, or you choose to stand your ground and face the consequences. Maybe I haven't said this before, I'm not sure, but this is not the first time that organization was trying to silence me when it comes to Palestine. This has been going on for years, and time after another, I felt like I'm being silenced only when it comes to Palestine. And as a Palestinian myself, I just can't see this injustice going on and turn a blind eye and move on to other stories. It comes down to your priorities. Um, and this is not just about me specifically. There are other journalists, many of them before me, and there are many more to come who will face the same consequences for standing up to what's right. I believe this must happen. Some people like us will sacrifice their careers for the truth to prevail in the end. Um, I obviously felt like I was disappointed, honestly. I wanted to believe in this organization, in the claims of diversity and inclusion, in the claims of empowering journalists of minorities, but my experience has been completely the opposite of this. So I was disappointed. However, the passion inside is not really connected to one organization, right? As you
Mm.
said, if you do this because you have a passion to tell the stories, because you have a passion, you believe in what you're doing. And this is what I believe too. Um, right now, I lost the audience of Global News, but I certainly have the audience of the whole world. Right now, I can tell my stories literally to the whole world. I don't need a specific platform to empower my voice, unfortunately. I wanted that. I wanted to bring in some change to legacy newsrooms in the West, but some people just don't want that. So this is not going to stop me, of course. This is not going to stop any person who's passionate about justice to the Palestinians, whether they're a journalist or not. And I would certainly keep going.
Mm. And as you speak, I can sense the passion and the deep love you have, not only for the media space but for the cause of the Palestinian people. And we are just talking about this with my colleagues earlier about how Palestinians are just so passionate about telling their stories. I mean, you can see children as young as 5, 10 cameras in hand, microphones in hand, you know, out there saying, you know, this is what's happening, and we want the world to see, you know, not from anyone's point of view, but from our point of view. We want to tell our own stories. As someone of Palestinian heritage, why is that? Why is it? Is there such a? Is it maybe something that's inculcated when you guys are small to say, you know, you live in an age where you can just grab a camera phone and expose the realities of a very unjust world? Where does that passion fire come from Palestinians to be so vocal from a very young age to talk about what's happening in their country?
So I'm sure you have realized by now that Palestinian people are very resilient. Their
Mm,
culture, their identity has not been erased by 75 years of occupation. Um, and they choose to keep going. They love life. They want a free country. They want to fight for their basic rights. And as you said, it it's a mix of belief, strong belief, religious belief, plus belief in the justice of your cause. If you truly believe in that your cause is just, that you deserve what you're asking for, why would you ever stop? I am the third or fourth generation. My grandfather, um, my great grandfather left Palestine on barefoot and moved to Jordan as a refugee. I am the fourth generation. I have never stepped foot in Palestine. I'm right now living in Canada. I obviously was never able to visit Palestine, unfortunately, because of the occupation. But I would never forget. I never forgot. I still identify as a Palestinian. I tell my daughter, "You are Palestinian." My daughter was born in Canada. She's the fifth generation, but it runs in the blood. The resilience, the willing to fight for your freedoms. It runs in the blood, and I'm sure. South Africans can relate to that. They're willing to fight for your rights, to not give up. This is something comes from the belief that you deserve what you're asking for.
no, definitely. Just lastly, before I let you go, that is well put, by the way. Um, what message would you like to convey to aspiring journalists, you know, from wherever in the world, who find themselves in a similar situation, or are going to find themselves in a similar situation in the future, where you're basically shut out of the newsroom, yet you're so passionate, you want to tell your story, you believe in justice and cause, you know, and as a journalist, you know, you taught about the ethics of a journalist, which is truth, you know, and you want to tell your truth, but you are silenced by organization. What advice would you give to young aspiring journalists, who, for certain, as long as the Palestinian issue is happening, or any kind of injustice keeps happening in the world, you are going to find stories that are similar to yours?
Look, there's a shift these days in the job description of a journalist, in the duties of a journalist. To be told in journalism school that your job is to be neutral and to stay unengaged with the story and to only state the facts, that's old school.
Hmm.
A journalist's job is not to only state the facts. AI can do that today. Google can do that today. A journalist's job is to speak truth to power. You have a responsibility to inform your audience. You have an ethical responsibility to call out injustice when you see it. And you will face consequences. Journalists in the Middle East, in the global South, they go to jail
Hmm.
for speaking the truth to power. They're silenced and they're exiled, but they still choose to do it. If they have been adapting the Western style of neutralism, of being balanced according to Western standards, they would never speak up against authoritarian regimes. They would never say a thing in front of Assad regime, for example, committing crimes against the Syrian people, they would never say a thing to Uyghur Muslims, to stand up with Uyghur Muslims in China, and so on. A journalist's job is to give a voice exactly to these people who are voiceless. If you choose not to do so and face no consequences, you would rather have a lame career, unimpactful, and so it obviously comes down to what you choose to be. I believe that an ethical journalist must face these consequences and must speak up for those people who can't speak for themselves.
Mm. No, thank you so much, Zahraa. It was really a pleasure talking to you. I can tell you, as a South African, with the history that we have, we know the impact that global solidarity has. We know, there were journalists sitting in various newsrooms across the world speaking about the injustice that are happening in our country, and it made a difference. We fought the apartheid regime and ultimately won. So don't lose power, don't lose your spirit. Everyone is just trying to do their bit. There are going to be little bumps along the road, but you have the spirit of the Palestinian people in you. You have their blood, and you are making a difference. And we are with you and all the people of Palestine during these difficult times here in South Africa. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Salila. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
You too. I appreciate it.
Thank you.